Okay, great. We're back. We're back. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. My name is Steve from LKT. We're doing our third film review of tonight. As you guys can see, we're doing Roman J. Israel. I wanted one with the director's name, but I couldn't find one. So we're gonna get to going. I guess Instagram is saying it's letting people know that I went live. Okay, so I'm just gonna start as people come in. You can ask me questions as we go. If not, just gonna keep on going. I got some notes. So, third film review, Roman J. Israel, starring, Denzel Washington, says the name right here. Right? Right. So, honestly, I was taken aback because this is a movie where it's based on a real person, but the story, right? Written by director. Let's go. Oh, Dan Gilroy. Yes. So it's a fictitious story, which is weird to me. So it's based on a real person, but it's a fictitious story written and directed by Dan Gilroy. And that being said, I thought it was based off of true events, like our first film review with Black Klansman. And it has similar themes throughout the film, if you guys watched it. But it's more story-based from my aspect that I was looking at it versus like cinematic or like a true soundscape. Like it had both, but I'm saying the story like stood out even more for me at least, right? So, but there was a crazy cinematic shot when Roman J. Israel, I'm just gonna call him Roman for like the film entirety, when he was basically like in the alleyway and the camera like dropped down vertically, like a vertical tracking shot. Hello, how you guys doing? And that was like really impressive, even though it kind of took long, had some like mystery behind it. It was about like 7 seconds where the camera just went from like the top of the screen down to the bottom, and then finally the car put in the alley, right? So there was that. But overall, the writer focused on like Roman's story. We get some exposition in the beginning from like his letter, which gets a lot of films do this where they give like the ending at the beginning. I wonder if I can wave. Hello, hello. Where he's typing his letter out, basically saying that he's guilty of a crime, and that's put in the beginning of the movie. And I think did Black Klansman do that too? A lot of films do that where they just show a snippet of the end or a scene of the end, and then they tie it back all together, saying like, "Oh, this is how it came to fruition." But specifically for Roman's character, he has an interesting arc where he's stable in the beginning, but even though like he has these weird quirks about him, like how he might ramble or has jitters, but he's like very smart, like intellectual, like very like he's able to like memorize numbers like to a task, like to a T. But he goes where like he's steadfast in the beginning on like him being an activist, and then he kind of backtracks once basically he's part of his law firm. Once his boss basically dies, who was in a coma for a while, but eventually he dies, and then he backtracks away from his stance of being like for quote unquote the little people, and then he takes the approach of the people who he was against, which is like corporate America, saying like the dirty lawyers of the system who give out harsh like 15-year sentences for like misdemeanors instead of like maybe a 5-year, and the person's like 17 years old. Instead of them going to like juvie, they go to like an actual like correctional facility, right? So like he strays away from that, and that's kind of what the movie is about, in my opinion, where he has this revelation of how he makes basically 360, yeah, where he starts out, because he actually like starts out like in the party for like Black Lives Matter a little bit, because they touched on that, and he wants to be hired, but he doesn't have enough money, so like money is also motivation for him, and he's going like, I need the funds, but I want to stay true to myself, which is always like a tough dynamic where your morals are like questioned, or your virtues as a person, or your character as a person comes into questioning when there's money on the line, when decency of living is on the line. But eventually he gets hired by a student of his former boss who passed away, because his boss was also a professor at a university in the film. And at first he didn't like his new boss. Nothing about being against age. His new boss is younger than him, but he has thought that he got to his level of success through like dirty ways or dirty means. But he has his own revelation when Roman himself basically takes money that he shouldn't have because he had knowledge from a criminal case that he was working on. Long story short, the guy ends up dying indirectly because of him. Roman gets in trouble, is going to turn himself in, but at the end of the day, he dies. Like, someone basically kills him because he told on the person who basically literally he was fighting for. It's a weird conundrum. Like, the person he basically told on, he was also working the case to get them a lower sentence, because originally they had like life in jail, or technically prison, because life in prison is going to be that long. And he backtracks and realized that he should basically stick with his morals throughout the whole time, instead of playing basically the game of, oh, let me try to like step on other people to the top, instead of staying steadfast and eventually maybe 50-50 chance slowly getting to a decent, amount of, not fame necessarily, but status that he could achieve through him being a lawyer. Technically it says Esquire. He calls himself an Esquire. He was like, it's below knight but above like a serf, which I kind of like, because honestly I think Esquires were the one who actually wrote down what the barons or lords of the 1800s said, but that's on another note. So continuing forward, things of morality, things of humanity, due diligence. Honestly, they never said this film was based or took place in time in like 2007, 2008, which I like. They didn't verbally say it, but they showed it. So shout out to the props team, the people who set up the design or like the set. I like that because it never said it, but it showed cues. One from his like Walkman he was using, his old like headphones, to his old computer he had, to, unless I'm totally wrong and he never actually updated any of his like technology, that could be the case, because he had an old Windows like 2003 computer and it felt very 2007 to me, because like I experienced that from the computer, from his headset, from his clothing, the costume design team when they were dressing him. But eventually he does get updated, and they're still using like he said he's using a flip phone. So that's why I kept on thinking, is this taking place in 2007? But honestly, I still am gonna go with that theory, only because other people weren't using like current day smartphones like Apple's. They're using like Square box, like off-brand Android still. So that's why I'm still going with this film took place in 2007. And probably that's when the real actual Roman J. Israel was doing his work. Plus, he worked 26 years for this basically smaller lawyer firm, and then eventually coming up to a bigger pool and district based in LA. And then basically he gets that taste of, let's say, a higher quality lifestyle, goes out, enjoys a nice hotel, enjoys like a very nice dinner, and he thinks to himself like, wow, like I don't want to serve people that are ungrateful for my hard work that I put in over 26 years. So that's where he like starts to backtrack and like throw his hands up and say, you know what, it's over for me. I'm just gonna work in the corporate sector and do what everyone else does, which is earn a lot of money, and whoever I hurt in the process, it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, he couldn't like allow himself to do that. He ends up getting back the money and like writing a letter saying that it was wrong for him to take it, and he like, even the money he spent was like around a couple grand. He gives that back too, also in like grave detail. So moving forward, there were, I don't know, the pacing overall, it felt good. I didn't think it like dragged, but it's not a film where it's a lot of action at all. It's more story based. That's why I keep going back to the script and how Gilroy was writing it to convey, honestly, a lot of different things. One of like due diligence, one of, oh, here we go with the gray area of life and what's right and wrong, and that if you're going to quote unquote do right, there's going to be a harder struggle, which is weird. There's going to be a harder struggle to be a pro activist and actually like fight the good fight, quote unquote. Because originally his living conditions for Roman were pretty terrible, always next to like construction, and that's what he was telling. Basically, I'm pretty sure that was the Black Lives Matter like group he was speaking at or in. Still coming back to the point I made in Knives Out, to the point I made in Black Klansman. Whenever, I'm gonna say this like every review, when a film is actually filmed in real time, that culture directly influences that filmmaker or director or writer. So Roman was from a different generation of like activists and protesting, how they actually used the law to actually get things done, versus basically a current modern 2007, 2008 age where they're more internet based, or starting at least, because Windows coming out 2001-ish, right? And they were fighting over smaller issues like basically the seating in the film versus looking at the larger, bigger picture. And basically that's when Roman decided, you know, I'm throwing my hands up, I'm walking away from this, and I'm just going to push forward with my life and quote unquote, you can say living his best life, because he starts getting more like Taylor suits and like looking better and like started doing his hair a little bit more. But then he realized that even though he might buy all these things, that it wasn't worth anything at the end of the day if he was quote unquote selling a portion of his soul, in my opinion, to gain that type of lifestyle, because he's sacrificing his like virtues and beliefs, right? Because even activists get tired. Even people who are like quote unquote on the right path get tired, and that like no one's hands are like truly clean. That's kind of like what this film was like telling me in a sense. So yeah, I did like that setup though at the end before he basically was killed. How conveniently, but this is how movies work, how the person he was quote unquote supposed to be fighting for, he ends up betraying, almost like a Judas moment, you know? He ends up betraying because he took the ransom money, and then now he has to pay the price. Honestly, that's a really harsh penalty. Has to pay the ultimate price with his life, even though he dedicated like those 26 years into fighting for like the little man. If anyone has like any questions or anything about what's happening right now, reviewing Roman J. Israel, if you guys have any comments, I can like read them, Thank you for joining in. My name is Steve from LKT, by the way. We're just going through the film of this week. That's all. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I do want to touch on the character of, I believe her name is Maya, a little bit. It does give insight to his background through her lenses, because she's kind of like the head of the, I guess, for 2007 at least. I don't know originally when like Black Lives Matter started, but she's like the head of like that Black Lives Matter like party in LA. And they show her in the light of that she draws inspiration from him because he was so true to like his calling, even though he was he had like rough time. Like he was only making like $500 a week, so he had a rough go of it. Like before the passing of his boss, and then he was basically able to make more money. But like she was like, you're staying like true to your core values. And honestly, this is where the soundscape really came in for me, when she was talking to him about he inspired her, but he was like drowning her out and he wasn't paying attention, and he was just eating like this, it wasn't filet mignon, but this expensive dish at the restaurant that he took her to, and he was more focused on the food than what she was saying, and the audio kind of like went into white noise and faded in and out, and I like that a lot. But also that showed that like, it showed like he wasn't paying attention, but I also think it showed something like more into it, where his character is saying, you know what, I'm still done or over the point of like trying to help people who don't want to be helped. And she was the character trying to like bring him back into it, but it wasn't until he had like this shock of like, almost, it was a paranoia honestly, when he tried to run away from his issues, kind of like Jonah, when he tried to run away from his issues and packed all his stuff in a U-Haul truck and literally went into the desert and tried to run away. He was paranoid. And then she was like the voice of reason for him. Like Maya was like, hey, sometimes you gotta push on that head and then just go through your own like muddy water. And then they used like the cheesy, it was cheesy to me, but he's like, I'm in the desert. Literally, he was in the desert. And she's like, sometimes life is like a desert. Like, you don't know where you are. And I got the point, but sometimes some things just seem a little cheesy, a little too cheesy. But that's just me. But I guess you say, quote unquote, he sobered up, and then he realized what he should do, and then like he turns himself in. Another drawback for me was also the ending where he dies. Like, that's fine. I guess you can say life has repercussions, but at the same time, it's kind of like a passing of the torch, because he did have this stack of files, which was his life work over 26 years. And he had to pass that off indirectly to his younger boss, which was basically a case for like a federal court to like rewrite the current law system to help people that were in worse situations and didn't have the funds to fight, quote unquote, big corporations or sentences or orders against them. Like, it felt very like Pursuit of Happiness a little bit to me at the beginning, because he was still like the little man in a sense, and then his arc into how he became into like the more pronounced corporate world, and then backtracking, fighting back, not even fighting back for the little man, but realizing that he took a wrong turn in his life and that now he's going to correct his mistake. So like that aspect of it, I just wish personally, since this is a fictitious film based off a real person, which is very unique by the way, that the writer Gilroy would have maybe said, hey, even though he messed up, you can not undo your wrong, but you can like forge ahead, which he was basically saying, forge ahead and now do the right thing. But he ends up dying, so he doesn't really end up fulfilling that, for me at least. Overall, I like the film. Hope you guys liked it too. Watched it, enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to be doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So watch that, look out for that next Sunday. Around the same time, I do these in the evening. Hope you guys are enjoying your summer. And we'll be like doing it in person. So it's like a countdown LKT challenge to seeing everyone back in person after like a year and a half, really. Yeah. So thanks for coming. Thanks for stopping by. Oh, sup, Sam? Sup, Kayla? Yeah. Got two people. I think I got one person left. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Okay? Take care. Adios. As I still struggle. Oh, if I'm still on, by the way, I can't post these to the story because I looked up that Instagram actually stopped that feature. So sorry about that. But you got to tell your friends and family to catch the LKT Instagram streams in the future on Sunday nights. Okay? Great. You guys take care as I still struggle to figure this out. I'm still gonna struggle.